Hi, Bother Brigade. Here's what's bothering me today. So, as I'm sure many of you and most people around the world have heard by now, of the scenes that have been discovered in Bucha in Ukraine. It's a small town on the outskirts of Kiev where some of the heaviest fighting was done as the Russians tried to break into and encircle the city. Now, we're not going to go into detail about that, and we're not even going to touch on how some people are saying, oh no, it's like what's true and what's not. Like, that's not what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is that it took about a month, possibly less than a month, given like potential dating of like when they saw with satellite imagery when the bodies were in the streets. And we saw also like videos of Ukrainians committing war crimes, hell, technically in a recent video, keeping soldiers there confined and like making them do calls and propaganda and stuff like that. That's technically a war crime. But I, again, really want to stress that it took less than a month for war crimes to start happening between what are ostensibly brotherly nations. I know there's like a specific kind of term that some people have, I think possibly in Russia or something, where it's like Ukraine is like our little brother, or it's like a brother. Like, there are clear parallels. They have a shared history, right? With going back to the Kievan Rus, they have centuries of shared Slavic history, cultural ties, linguistic ties, historical ties, being under both the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union. These are people who are, they're not the same as many will tell you, and some people will, like legit fight you over that. But these are just about as close to brothers as you can get with nation states. And it took less than a month for the war crimes to start happening. And this is supposedly, when we saw all the mask off comments from journalists and like Prince William and everyone saying, oh, we expect war and barbarity in the brown parts of the world, but it's so shocking and just, it hits different when we see it here in good old Europe, good old civilized Europe, right? That's the undertone. And so in civilized Europe, yet again, we are seeing absolute brutality. And also those people conveniently leave out the Balkans in the 90s, right? But that's what this is. It's yet another return of people ostensibly, a brotherly people, or two peoples in this case, coming to blows over like what? Geostrategic interests on behalf of the Russians. Because again, spoiler alert, folks, the main conspiracy theory is that the world is run by rich, greedy sociopaths having to interact with other rich, greedy sociopaths. Everything kind of makes sense once you go for that operating. But it's still really concerning that it took less than a month for war crimes to start happening between brotherly nations when shit hit the fan. What happens, this is like, would that happen here in North America? Let's say Canada and America went to war for some reason. America decided, nope, that's it. We need the water. We're invading Canada. And then the war crimes start after like 3 weeks or something. This is objectively horrifying. And I don't see enough people talking about that angle because, yeah, the war crimes are horrifying and they absolutely should be investigated and condemned regardless of who's doing it. The Russians, the Ukrainians, people who did war crimes in the past, people who are doing war crimes in other corners of the world right now that, no media focus is on because, it's all about Ukraine, right? All of that should be condemned. But it's really disturbing to see it happen so quickly and seemingly so easily between what are supposed to be brotherly nations. And so, unfortunately, that makes me really worried about future conflict and scarcity, either within Europe, between Canada and America, between Latin American countries, between African countries, across tribal ties, like whatever the barrier might be, and no matter how good the relations currently are or have been, or even centuries of shared religious, linguistic, cultural history, that can all go away in the blink of an eye and give way to the most horrifying acts known to man. Barbarity, actual barbarity, can happen between former friends and neighbors and allies. It's deeply distressing, incredibly horrifying, and not enough people are really talking about it or thinking about it. And that's what's bothering me today.